I have come across something hilarious on Amazon. There is a fraud self-published writer named Preston Child, and it is his name that makes him a fraud. There is a pair of talented, intelligent writers who have written many great books, sometimes collaborating and sometimes working separately. They have made the Agent Pendergast series, novels like The Relic and Reliquary and The Ice Limit. I'm actually jealous of their writing style and the vocabulary, and wish I had such a vocabulary readily accessible in my head without a thesaurus. Usually when these authors write a book as a pair, they put their last names on the cover as Preston and Child. Or when they write separately, it's either Douglas Preston or Lincoln Child. But the "and" between their last names is important here. Now, you got this dumbass who used the pen name Preston Child, as if his first name is Preston and his last name is Child. He puts that on the cover of his book, and it looks so similar. So you got Blue Labyrinth, written by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Then this book, Hate, written by the dumbass who calls himself Preston Child. If you aren't paying attention, you might think it's the authors Douglas and Lincoln. So, I saw a book advertised called Ice Station Wolfenstein, and I thought it was by the two great authors. So I researched a little, and then I read all the reviews, and turns out it's just some idiot using their last names for himself. He has written a multitude of shitty novellas under the pen name Preston Child, and has flooded Amazon with them. And there are so many dumbasses that ended up buying his book and then complaining in the reviews that it's not the real Preston and Child authors. So here are some of those reviews. Sorry to say, I bought this fraud without realizing it is not Preston and Child. Ass got me this time, but won't again. Couldn't get past the second chapter, so boring. Poorly written from the start. Then another writes, wish I had seen the recent reviews before reading or paid more attention when buying. The author tries to imitate a Douglas Preston book, and poorly so. And then another one writes, I note that this author does not have their own separate author page, which creates confusion for many readers. This is not Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Preston and Child's books appear like this, Preston and Child. They also wrote an excellent book called Ice Limit. It appears this author is gaming the system. Then another points out, Ice Station is also a title by Matthew Riley, another excellent book. This is not an excellent book. Graham Brown has a series called Black Sun. James Rollins is also running a series called The Order of the Sanguines series. Wolfenstein is a popular video game. It appears the titles and authors' names were built to create confusion and make people think they're getting a different product. Yeah, he ripped off a video game title for his book, Ice Station Wolfenstein. Apparently, he's also ripping off names of organizations and people in his novel that had been used by other writers to confuse idiots into buying his books, and so he gets ranked up there along with those other authors on Amazon. So here are more reviews by those who were fooled. This is not a good book. I thought it was by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, and was not amused to discover it was not. Then another writes, Yep, I made the mistake as others did. Wrong author. I felt something was was very wrong about the second paragraph. I put the book down by the third chapter. Later, thank God, I realized the book was not inked by you-know-who, by reading the reviews. Fool me once, shame on me. Do not read. Then another writes, Like a lot of other folks out there, I thought this was a new novel by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Turns out it is written by some guy who probably created a pen name of Lincoln Child just to sucker people like me into buying his low-level novels. I kept wondering why the story was so boring and poorly written. Now I know why. Save your money and get something worth reading out there. It's funny how there are 61 reviewers that got duped by this bullshit. And then this guy writes, he doesn't even bother to use common sense when he writes, or even watch a documentary on what he's writing about, or in the very least read a fucking Wikipedia article or two for his research. Here's a plot of his book. Some alcoholic, depressed journalist gets some documents suggesting long ago the Nazis built an ice station in Antarctica. He meets a beautiful academic and a billionaire willing to fund an expedition to find it, so they travel to Antarctica and immediately find the entrance to this lost, concealed ice station without any effort. The station is the size of a small city, complete with generators, furnaces, electrical and heating systems, running water, hot showers, fully equipped labs, and lots of bank vault-type doors. Oh, and a U-boat floating in a U-boat pen, miles from the coast. No explanation for how the Nazis built such a well-equipped underground city so far from Germany, and how did they get all the stuff there. The main heroes get all the systems running immediately, even though everything has been abandoned for 70 years. Then they run into an army of mercenaries that have been living there for some time. Everybody starts dying of some virus, but the main character develops a vaccine using 60-year-old equipment in a matter of hours. Eventually the heroes have to escape, so they fire up a German submarine that has been sitting there for 70 years and sail underground out of the base under miles of the Antarctic landmass. They use a diesel engine underwater, when in reality U-boats used diesel engines while on the surface, and batteries to run underwater. Then they use 70-year-old torpedoes that are already somehow preloaded to sink the bad guy's destroyer. Then there are actual morons that wrote reviews where apparently they never caught on that they were suckered, and indeed believed they were reading an actual Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child book. And here are some reviews from them. Somewhat disappointing Preston Child effort. Not at all of the level of past works. Maybe if I had never read anything from them in the past, but I have been spoiled. I only even give 3 stars because it's them. Hardly the effort I would expect of even a brand new author. I can't recommend it, I'm afraid. And then another person writes, Guys, I really love your work, but here I have to ask, what you smoked during the ride. Such a crude story. The Nazi angle, the U-boat which floats from an undersea cavern with no pressure adjust, with just a few untrained persons after 50 years of rest. The woman who develops magically an antidote against a deadly virus in a 50-year-old Nazi lab. And the language, please find your usual form again. These idiots aren't real. They read the entire fucking book and they're not realizing that this is not the Preston and Child that they're thinking of. See, eventually Amazon must have forced this guy to change his author's name to prevent confusion, but only on this one particular book. So he started using the initials PW Child instead. But he also has a shit ton of other books out there that are still under Preston Child name, like this novel Hate, described by one reviewer as weird little novella, and very strange and a little sick. While this is all as funny as fuck to me, a serious part of me is very much concerned that my writing style leans a lot more toward this idiot's writing style than that of the real Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. And come to think of it, I really should have pulled this trick myself first. I could have sold a lot more books by now. Scamming so many people who can't be bothered to research a little bit what they're buying. I mean, this guy fooled at least 61 people with his phony name, pretending to be these famous writers. Just imagine, I could have had almost $200 right now from doing something like that.